And we're live. Welcome to Weekly Inkblot, episode 13. This is the beginning of the anger episodes, because anger is really not one of those things that you can deal with in just like one night. Um, so I will start off, I guess, with my normal stuff. What is anger? Like, do we know, or do we just...
Oh, I didn't know if you were okay.
No,
I
I'm
thought you were going to
just...
say something. I'm sorry.
An intense, irrational behavior brought on by, surrounding actions.
Oh, and I should be polite. Of course, I'm Emmy. We have Ellie, and Nellie is joining us tonight. She is a blogger. She blogs about OCD and the things going on in her life. And her blog is actually really good.
Oh, well, thank you.
I should do a plug. You can, but I can't remember the URL right now, so you can say it.
It's misspelled, of course, and it's supposed to be neurotic Nelly OCD at Blogspot, but it actually says nertoic Nelly. I'm also dyslexic. Great. At blogspot.com.
Okay. And so yeah, what I have, because I have all of these. This is all from time in the outpatient program. Anger it's an emotion that people experience when they are feeling hurt or threatened by something or someone. It's generally considered to be a secondary emotion. Primary emotions are what we get first, and then anger is what the emotions get converted into, is how they view it. So, like, the primary emotions are hurt, pain, fear, feeling threatened, and things like frustration, anxiety, disrespect. Like, it's generally, if you're going to try to deal with your anger issues, one of the things that you need to kind of sit down and think about is, am I really angry? Or am I compensating for something? So, so we know that anger is we tend to view it as a negative emotion, which, emotions are not, they're not good. Emotions aren't good and they're not bad. Emotions are just emotions. It's our reaction to the emotions. So, but so why do you guys think that anger is considered such a bad emotion?
Because you're generally pretty irrational when you're feeling angry. So you're not really thinking about what you're doing or what you're saying.
I think that usually when people think of anger, they think of like rage, or usually, well, it can be abusive when you get angry, like because you don't pay attention to necessarily how it comes out. Like if you're a talker, you might cuss, or sometimes you can aim it at people even though you're not actually angry at that person, but more like the situation. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be angry.
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's there's a lot of reasons to be angry, and it's definitely not that anger should be viewed as bad. It's just how we deal with it that changes it. But so, what would be a good reason to get your anger under control if you're if you don't have control over it.
You could go to jail?
Yeah. You have children. People around you that you don't want to hurt in general.
I agree with that. I also think that, you know, if you don't control your anger, you could lose your job. You could lose your friends. There's like, you know, I mean, there's just a lot of people don't do well if you're yelling at them and using your anger towards them. So you could damage your healthy relationships or make them unhealthy, and possibly your, you know, your jobs and things like that as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons we had written down on here is it's not just the all the trouble you can get into. It's also you have to, like, if you sit down and really think about how the body reacts to anger, there's a lot of things that constant anger can do to hurt you. Like high blood pressure, your heart pumping too fast. Those two kind of go together. Getting an upset stomach, losing your appetite, getting nauseous, headache. People get jitters from being angry, like, you know, people who end up like shaking from anger.
I have actually witnessed somebody that had a problem like that, and it was my grandfather, and he had, I think he had, I don't know how many bypass surgeries, but he had a very bad heart anyway, and he would just, like, at the weirdest things, fly off the handle. That's what we called it, fly off the handle, and it was very bad for his health. I mean, he didn't smoke, well, he did when he was younger, but he didn't have salt. But anytime he would have this, he would have to have a nitro patch, and he would have to go through all that. And he just, I never did understand why he flew off the handle, but it could be something as simple as walking in the room. And it was very bad for his health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to be careful. And, you know, when doctors tell you that you need to, like, if you have, like, the high blood pressure or whatnot coming from your anger, like, you really need to stop and consider, okay, how can I fix this? Because, you know, who knows what could happen.
Right.
And it's not just like, there's also the issues of, like, depending on where you get angry, like people with road rage could get into car crashes.
Oh, yeah.
Which could kill them, it could kill other people. And it's not worth it.
And you can also, you know, when you confront somebody in the moment of being very angry, you're not really thinking clearly, and you don't know who you're confronting, and you don't know if they're a violent person, if they're a police officer. I've seen that on YouTube before. And you get out of your car and you go to confront somebody for whatever reason. That's dangerous. It's dangerous to your health. It's dangerous to the other person's health, and it's just, it's really not appropriate.
I mean, you're taking a risk, especially with the conceal and carry laws. You know, that person could have a gun. You don't know.
Yeah.
Overreact and you can get shot. I mean.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of reasons why getting your anger under control is very important.
So I have a list of 4 different myths here about anger. The first myth is anger is inherited. I'm sure everybody has heard that.
I have no idea where they got that one.
Well, people say it all the time, like, oh, you know, she has her father's temper.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't have any idea why people automatically go to, it's inherited. No.
It's more likely a learned behavior, because if your parents are people that fly off the handle, you probably will pick that up and also be that way. Or, you know, they might have maybe something like bipolar, which in case they have maybe moments where they seem angry. And that would be most likely hereditary. But an anger in itself it's an emotion. It doesn't have hereditary properties, as far as I know.
No, it doesn't. And what you said about it being a learned behavior is exactly what it is. Because to say that it's inherited is to say that it's something like genetically in you that you cannot change in any way. And generally, when we're young, we watch our parents and we watch those around us, how they respond to anger and their emotions, and that's how we learn how to react to our own. So the fact that my brother and I both have anger issues is not because my father, passed it on to us, but because he taught it to us.
Right.
The second one is that anger automatically leads to aggression.
I don't think that's true.
No. Aggression, in my experience, tends to be more of a learned behavior. If they see if they grow up seeing parents who, get angry but aren't exhibiting, aggression all the time, they're probably not going to be very aggressive people.
Well, and then you have to consider, people who take anger and turn it into something positive, then that couldn't be aggressive. Like, I got angry with my OCD and I wanted to change it. Instead of being miserable, I decided to be angry with it and fight back. And that's not an aggressive, I wasn't, like punching myself in the face or like going after people. So, anger doesn't have to be aggressive. That's got to be a myth, because you can change it into something positive, like sports, or turning it into a competitive thing rather than, a self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, and if we think about it, like, the anger is what leads towards change in our country and in our lives and whatnot. And like, take Rosa Parks for instance. She was pissed. They were forcing her to move to the back of the bus, and she was mad.
Yeah.
Because why should she be treated like a second-class citizen?
And she did not slap people. So.
Yeah, no, she didn't get up. She didn't beat the crap out of them, and because the story would have been much different had that been what happened.
Exactly.
And so, this is basically a misconception about how we view are the ways to express anger, and that all people use aggression to express anger, and that's actually not true, because there are a lot of constructive and assertive ways to do it.
Right.
And so that, it can lead to aggression in certain people, and those that let it get to that point. But that's not going to be the immediate thing.
Right. But that also goes back to learned behavior, because if you learn when you get angry that you're aggressive, then you would be that way, and if you don't, then you wouldn't be necessarily.
Mm-hmm. The third one on here, you must be aggressive to get what you want.
No.
That's just silly.
You're more likely to get what you want from being rational and logical and
assertive. Yeah.
I've always heard you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. That's what my mother always said. So if you want something, usually you're nice about it. So I guess I could see that in like maybe a corporate thing where it's very competitive and maybe you would have to be slightly aggressive. I'm not going to say, like really aggressive.
And I think more assertion than aggression.
Right. Probably. And being more direct. But, I don't see where letting your anger get out of control and being very aggressive gets you anything you want. I can't think of anything where that would be. Mm-hmm. Maybe a boxer.
what this myth says is basically that people confuse assertiveness with aggression, because most people don't understand what assertiveness is. And, the point of aggression is to dominate, to intimidate, to harm, or to injure another person, basically to win at any cost.
Right.
Whereas, assertiveness is to express feelings but still trying to be respectful of other people. Because, you want to change things, but you don't want to sit there and attack the person.
Right.
That's not a good way to handle it. The fourth myth is venting anger is always desirable.
No. I mean, when venting frustrations is usually productive. Venting anger, in a lot of cases, isn't. Venting anger tends to hurt more than it helps, depending on what it is you're doing.
I'm really not sure if that's, if it's helping your emotions, but it depends on where you're at and what you're doing too. If you're like in a therapy setting and they want you to vent your anger because you've had it built up, like that would make sense. But when you're venting, you tend not to be in control of what you're doing, and that could become, dangerous or really unhealthy rapidly.
I mean, and I would say, like, if you're really angry and you need to vent, wait until you calm down. And then try and, explain what it is that's been upsetting you. But don't do it when you're completely angry. Because it's rarely going to be anything good out of it.
I agree.
Yeah. This one is talking about like aggressive types of expressing, screaming or beating on pillows, things like that. Whereas like if you're really angry and you really need to vent, like I always tell this to people, whether they have any writing ability or not, keep a journal that's just you. And when you're upset, when you're angry and whatnot, you can vent all of that into the journal. And then when you're calmed down, like, go back and read through it, because you can learn a lot by doing that. Which you can learn about your anger responses, about how you handle or don't handle that.
Yeah. Again, punching bags can be useful. But
you have to be careful about how you do it, though.
Yeah, but generally you kind of want to steer clear of hitting things when you're angry all the time, because that can become a habit. And if you know that punching bag there, it means you're probably hitting and breaking something else.
And if you're beating on a punching bag or something like that, you don't want to go in the direction of picturing the person that you might be angry at, because that is aggressive behavior, and it can lead to a dangerous slide in of eventually, like, maybe next time you don't go and hit the punching bag, maybe you just death them. So you have to be careful with that.
And on another note, when you are aggressively angry and you are punching things, you're more likely to injure your hands and things that you're doing. And then that's surgery later on. And that's, of course, going to be more frustrating and painful. So
boxer's fracture.
Exactly. And that's actually, it's really common to get those from punching things like walls or, even punching bags.
You.
No,
because
and it's
if you're gonna go around punching walls and everything, not only are you hurting yourself, you're hurting property, which may or may not be yours.
Right.
And then if it is yours,
deposit.
if it is yours, then you're the one paying for it, and that's just...
You're still the one paying for it one way or the other. I
Yeah.
mean, it's never a good thing, especially if you can't afford to do it.
Exactly. But again, there's the health issues that are involved with it, because you can physically hurt yourself. If you throw something, you could hurt somebody you didn't mean to hit, or you could it could bounce back and hit you, depending on what it is, and then you have more pain, which again could not be what you really were hoping for.
Mm-hmm. But it is, like, especially with mental health, and like people who have gone through abuse or have gone through things like with doctors not treating them correctly or hospitals not treating them correctly, as you go through life, like there's a lot of times there's going to be some anger pent up that you haven't been able to get out. Anger at people, anger at situations. Like, I know that I sit there and I look back at some of the abuse in Utah, and it's like, I wish I could go back in time and when it was happening and be like, dude, this is extremely effed up what you're doing. And then we hold on to it, and that kind of anger it's not helpful to your chance of moving forward, in your chance of recovering and getting to a point where that isn't affecting you as much. Like I haven't completely dealt with all the anger when it comes to my father, and I have to eventually if I want to get better, because I have to be able to assertively say, like, this is what happened, this is what it did. And he doesn't have to say sorry, and he doesn't have to ask for an apology, or he doesn't have to ask for forgiveness or anything like that for me to figure it out and get past it.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, dealing with anger issues over things that have happened when you were young, it is important to remember you can't change the past. You can affect your future all you want, but you can never go back and change the past, and it's futile to try. What you can do is try to help yourself get to a place where you can accept it as a course of, what happened, and just try and move on.
And that's hard.
Yeah, it's never easy.
Some things, like, it'll feel just about impossible. But one of the things we did in the intensive outpatient program when we were doing all of this stuff, and she gave us like so many handouts on anger, just to explain what it is. One of my friends who had some real anger issues coming into the group, she found that keeping a journal where she wrote down her emotions throughout the day helped her understand where her anger was coming from. Like, to sit there and be like, okay, what am I upset about? Like, she had specific times, like at 1 o'clock, she needed to write down what her emotions were, and if she was angry, to like delve down into why she's angry, to try to understand so that she can fight that off or not have as bad of a reaction. And that actually helped her a lot. Like, it really kind of opened her eyes to what was going on to bother her. And she was like, God, like, she was like, I'm so thankful that I ended up deciding to do this because it really works. The second thing they had us do was to write an angry letter. And how this worked is you write a letter to someone that you're really, really angry at. They don't have to be alive, and you never have to send them the letter if they are. And then what you were supposed to do is when you were done with the angry letter, reread it, and then write a letter back to yourself from them with what you want to hear. Not what they would really say. Like, it's not about how they would actually react. It's about what you would need to hear to really be happy and to forgive them. And then when you're done with that, you reread that their response. And it's important because it's like once you read it out loud, you don't have to read it to anyone. You can just read it out loud in a room that nobody else is in, but to say it out loud is extremely powerful. And you'd be surprised the kind of emotions it brings up. And you almost feel a little relieved because, you know, even though you may know that they're never going to say this to you, that you have the chance to come to a point where them saying this doesn't actually matter.
Right. I think my mother had something like that dealing with her issues, and they had her write a letter in the hospital, and she did something very similar, and she said it really helped dealing with, you know, when you're in an abusive situation, you don't realize that you're angry until later, and then it just seems to come out at weird times or flashbacks or things like that. And it somehow, I don't know how to really say it, but it's like it soothed her emotions a little bit, that she could hear what she needed to hear when she was younger. Mm-hmm. Because she knew what she needed to hear, you know, as an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's most important in identifying what it is you would want to hear and what you feel is the correct response.
Right.
Versus what they'd actually say.
Right. Because they wouldn't say it right anyway, because they're the one that did it in the first place.
I mean, I've written a lot of angry letters to my sister that she'll never see. And I think for me, in those instances, what I have an issue with is I don't really know what I want to hear. There really isn't anything in particular I want to hear. It was just, it needed to be said one way or another. And like I said, she'll never read it, but at the time it was about the only way I could sort of cope with what was going on. And it did help. So, I mean, I wasn't able to, you know, figure out what it is I wanted to hear from her, because I still don't know. I still have no idea what it is I want to hear from her. But it did help.
I think it also probably helps when, for so long in situations you don't have a voice and you don't have the opportunity, or you're not given the opportunity to say what it is that you're feeling or how something has affected you. And even as an adult, sometimes these relationships are still very abusive and you still have no voice. And so being able to write it down, you can say what you want and not be afraid of their reaction or how they're going to, take it, because it's not for them, it's for you.
Mm-hmm. Then you don't have to worry about the confrontation or how they're going to treat you after, they know what you're saying, because it's not about them anyway.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it was actually, when we did it in group, we didn't read our angry letters. We only read out loud what the response was. And I kind of had the same feeling you did, Ellie, of like, I have no idea like what I would want to hear or what I would need to hear. So when you're writing the angry letter, like, a good way to, like, if you're really at a point where it's like, I don't even know, start looking at like specific things you have written down and being like, okay, so I said this. What kind of response do I want to this sentence right here? And then go through the letter. And that's how I really built mine, because I was sitting there like, God, I don't even know. Like, where do you start?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had our first real curse words.
I'm sorry, did you hear that? They heard that.
I'm sorry.
I was like, they don't hear it.
Yeah,
That's okay.
I was like, oh, no, totally didn't happen.
Whoops.
I'm just getting ticked off.
See, anger.
Now I gotta freaking reboot. Oh. Fucking like a goddamn cobra. Sorry.
What's up? Get out of here.
I'm going outside to smoke.
You're grounded, young man.
Well, Adam's supposed to write the freaking code and he didn't write it right, so now I got to. Now I gotta rewrite the
I'm
whole
so
damn
sorry.
source code.
Oh, it's fine. That's what's so funny about talking about this particular topic, because anger is just, it happens.
It does.
And sometimes you just gotta you just gotta swear it a little bit, let it out, and be like, this is just stupid, and then
And then walk away and be like, ah!
yeah, kind of. Sometimes.
Like, poop at you.
Okay.
Tell me about the conversations. Alrighty. That's not my house that you hear that from.
No.
No.
Oh.
I'm doing this in the basement next time.
Oh, come on!
You're
What is
fine.
wrong with you?
Stupid candles. All the things on girl needs to fly.
See, here's more about we were just learning about emotions and the intensities of them, because with all our different emotions, there's different intensities too. Like if I stub my toe, like, I'm gonna be angry for like a couple seconds, but then it's probably gonna die down as the pain dies down. Or there's times where it's just like you're so pissed, like you don't speak to someone for however long you don't. And so we were talking about this is a whole page on anger, and like how like different words for anger: irritated, annoyed, pissed off, frustrated, furious, scorned, offended, hostile, bitter, grumpy, livid. The body responses are increase of energy and alertness, clenching fists, muscles tightening, feeling tense, clenching your jaw, staring intensely at something, feeling wound up, feeling as though you will burst or explode out of your body. And then, like, different things that people do, like expressing opinions, expressing disagreement, expressing your side of the situation, complaining, talking loudly and quickly, gesturing with hands and arms, yelling, moving closer towards someone, glaring, insulting, trying to hurt someone emotionally or physically, hitting objects, making threats, and blaming others.
All sounds pretty accurate to me.
Yep. So you have a lot of, some of these are obviously, are fine. Like any of the thing where you're getting into an area where you're trying to intimidate someone, I think that's when you cross the line, and you need to like stop that. Like I know, some people when they're angry, they just get right up in your face as close as they can and just scream, and that's not. No matter who you're doing it to, it's not cool.
I think it helps too if you have someone who's like a really calm person. This is going to sound weird with all my problems. I don't anger easily. So when someone gets up in my face, generally instead of freaking out, I will just say something like, I don't get up in your face. And sometimes that's enough to stop them and go, well, no, you don't. Well, then why do you think it's acceptable for you to do that to me?
Yeah.
But that doesn't always work, but sometimes that's just enough to, I don't know, like click them back into reality that their behavior might be a little inappropriate at that moment.
Yeah, and I've seen that done in group before, like where somebody's getting really angry and upset and is starting to yell and is like, has anyone in this group treated you like that when they got angry? It's like, well, no. Be like, okay, then why do you think it's okay to do it to everybody else and to do it to a group at one time? Like, this isn't how they would treat it, so this isn't how you need to be treating it.
And again, I think that's really the learned response, because when you're enraged, it could take, for some people it's a slow burn, and for some people it's instantaneous. And the people that it's instantaneous with, they don't tend to think, because they don't have the slow burn. They just instantly are angry. So I think it's harder for them to think about how they act when they're in the heat of the moment. And so it might be easier to remind them, to step back, because when you're enraged, I mean, it's like an instantaneous kind of thing. And I think that that's probably where that lies, is that they don't have enough time to think before they do it.
That's why, like, if you're going to confront someone on something something that you're upset about, it's always usually a good idea to get your wits about you again.
Yeah.
Like, to calm down enough to be able to think and figure out how you want to approach it, versus just immediately, like, storming in, because, like, you have the chance to sit there and be like, okay, if I do this, this is probably how they're going to react. And, this could get, like, depending on what it is, like, this could get me fired, so we're not doing that. And this could be construed in the wrong way, so we're not doing that. And then figure out what is the correct way to deal with it.
I think it's also helpful if you have a best friend or somebody who might be a little bit more level-headed. Like if I have a problem and I want to get angry, I'm starting to get angry, which, again, you'd have to really work at it.
Yeah.
I get nervous, is this a normal response? And so I will sometimes call somebody and say, is this a legitimate anger problem? I mean, am I getting angry over something stupid? Am I just too sensitive? Because I tend to be sensitive, And they'll say, well, from a different third-party perspective, well, you might want to let that go, or, no, I think you have a right to be angry about that. You should call the person and tell them, that's not appropriate. And sometimes that really helps too, to have that sounding board that's not in the middle of the emotions and can look at it clearly.
I know, with all the issues I have with my father, and let me tell you, they are grand. Um, my brother is, when I decided that I was going to approach things differently and actually start talking them out with my father, which I haven't done, but I'll get there eventually. He told me, he was like, when you have the conversation, go ahead and just, we'll do a three-way call and I'll referee because Justin doesn't get angry that easily, or at least if he does, he has come to a point where like he really really knows how to control it, and so he's able to kind of look at things and be like, okay, I get why you're upset about this, but we should calm this down. And he also has this weird special ability, like, and now he uses it for good, but when he was young, he used it for evil. Where he knows all my buttons, so he can press the buttons that can get me riled up, but he can also press the buttons that can calm me down immediately.
Right.
Like when we were younger, like he could go from making me just scream out of anger and just, like, ah, and high-pitched baby screams to after, within a couple of words, I'm cool. And so he's like, okay, well, I know that I can calm you down, so, and sometimes having that third person involved makes it a lot easier because you know that you kind of have a buffer.
Right.
And it's not just, they're not just watching you, they're watching the other person as well.
Right.
And saying like, no, that's not cool to do to them. Rhapsody says she doesn't like anger because it scares her.
My one cat is scared of somebody walking in the room and making a noise.
Yeah, this cat generally is too. Are you
Anything.
scared? Are you scared of a blowing leaf?
Yep.
Yes, you are.
Maybe it's something to do with that particular type of cat because it looks just like mine.
Black cats. Yeah, I think so. Although it depends. But yeah, Rhapsody doesn't like anger because when people yell, she wants to go hide.
Yeah. And animals are pretty sensitive to anger too. Like they sense it even before sometimes you like express it.
Mhm. They know what's going on. But obviously anger is not one of those things where you can sit there and get control over it in like a couple of nights. I mean, I have a horrible temper and I'm a grudge holder. So, I know now, like, there are certain ways to calm myself down or certain things to move away from. And if I'm sitting there thinking about my grudges, it's like, is this worth holding a grudge over? Like, I held a grudge on my grandma for the longest time over bonbons. Yes, bonbons.
I love bonbons.
She had the bonbons at her house, and she told me that I could have some, but not to eat them all. And as all small children do, I didn't take them all. I left her one.
That was one. I still do that. What are you talking about?
and she got upset with me, and then when she got upset with me, I was like, fine, I don't even want them anyway, and like handed them back to her. And I didn't let her live that down until like maybe like 5 to 6 years ago. I think I finally let it go. And I also, over some stupid argument, didn't talk to my cousin for like 6 months. All because of my brother. And it's so I've worked hard on changing my reaction, and I've gotten to a point like where I have it mostly under control, but not always. And it depends on what's going on, but for the most part, like I don't blow up anymore. At least it's not as easy to make me blow up. And I have the ability now to kind of take things and be like, is this really worth holding a grudge over? And some things, yes, completely worth holding the grudge over. And then other things is like, nah, bonbons, no.
Well, I don't know. It is a chocolate.
That's
a tough decision.
They are really good.
Or those cherry cordials. Oh my god. I would probably slap somebody's grandma for a cherry cordial, and I'm not joking. It's a bad thing. But no, I get grudges are I'm not good with grudges or anger mainly because I'm guilt-ridden all the time. So like actually people being angry at me flips me out. Like I can't deal with it. I'm the groveler. I'm like, please forgive me, please forgive me, please. I'm sorry. But my mother is like that, and if she gets angry at you, she can just cut you off. Cut you off, and like you'll try to call her for like a week, and it may be something. Well, let's be honest. Half the time I don't even know what I've done, but she'll just like, and I'll talk to my grandma. She'll be like, "Your mother's mad at you," and I'll say, "Well, what did I do?" And then of course I go through my cycle of, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry."
Oh my God,
but
this is horrible. I'm a horrible person.
You're right, and I always feel like that anyway, so I really don't need that extra added,
Oh yeah, totally.
But and then she'll get over it, and we'll be fine. And I know it's always going to get over it, but it's always weird to me that she doesn't get angry like what you would think a normal person does. She just completely will shut you out until she's over it. Mm-hmm. And that may be a week, that may be 2 weeks. I think the longest she was mad at me was wasn't it like, I think it was like almost a month. Yep. And it was really weird because we talk every day, and I was just like, oh my God, what did I do? I still don't even know what I did, but it must have been bad.
You know what that reminded me, and I had to go to my email to open it up. My stepdad, he sent me a bunch of guy posters, and one of the ones, and I think this happens a lot. Judging by the frying pan that just flew by my head, I did something wrong. I can't wait to find out what it was.
So that is exactly. Sometimes people are just, I don't know if it's like a sensitivity to it, but some people are very easily just offended. And sometimes, and probably a lot of times, we don't know what we've done. But, I mean, that doesn't make it any less for them, but we're like, oh my God, maybe I said something wrong, or I forgot to take out the garbage, or, whatever it is. And then if the person's not able to tell them what they've done wrong, well, then they're going to do it again because obviously we don't know what we did. Mm-hmm. And so then you can have like a repetitive cycle.
Which is why it's important to learn how assertive communication works, because then you can kind of stop and be like, okay, this is what's bothering me. And it's not that you're a bad person, it's just that this annoys me, or this has hurt me, and maybe you didn't mean to, but it did. And assertive really is about focusing on yourself versus on the other person.
Right.
So, like, my husband didn't take the trash out, and it's like, rather than going and being like, you didn't take the trash out, and then this is your job, and you didn't do it, because then he's going to get defensive, and he's going to be like, well, what are you, like, freaking out for, And so instead being like, I'm really upset that the trash is still here because I don't want it to start smelling up the apartment. And so I just feel hurt that you haven't done it yet when I set it out for you. And maybe he'll be like, oh God, I completely forgot, or I was going to do it at the next commercial or something like that. And
they never take out the garbage. They forget all the time. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, that's exactly right. And a lot of therapy will teach you how to say things in a way where you don't say what they call accusatory things, which is you did not, you did this, you do that. But you can say something like, like you said, it bothers me when something happens. But you try to keep you out of it, because when somebody's defensive, they don't hear anything you say anyway. They're not interested because they're defending themselves.
Right.
And then again, people are going to get angry in that situation because nobody's listening.
And you're going to get off track, and it's going to turn into an argument that's going to end up with even more hurt feelings than you already had.
And all you wanted was the stinky garbage out. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can blow up. It's a mountain out of a molehill. It can get huge.
Mm-hmm. One simple little petty thing, like the garbage, to all of a sudden you're screaming like, well, you never do this, and you're lazy, and you're fat, and,
Exactly.
It's not a place you want to go.
No. And no one can hurt you like people that know you best.
Mm-hmm.
Like if a stranger just came up and said, well, you're dumb, you'd be like, you don't know me. But if it's somebody and when you're angry, you tend to bring up personal things.
Yes.
And it just hurts so much more.
Yeah.
Because they love you, and so they know everything about you, and they know what would hurt you most, and that's what they use.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard, and you can't take that kind of stuff back, because when people hear negative things, they're much more likely to take it in and view it as truth to themselves, versus it is like at least 10 times more likely that if you say something negative to someone, they're gonna hold it and return to that. Whereas if you say something positive, they're more likely to kind of be like, oh, thanks, and then forget it later.
I'm actually, they're recording, so go. Thank you. I hope you have edits. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I know for me personally, which is off topic, but I have a really hard time. I don't have a bad self-esteem, I have before, but I wouldn't say it's bad now. But if somebody says something negative to me, I really look at it, because I overanalyze everything anyway. Yeah. But if somebody says something positive, I get embarrassed a little bit. I blush, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's really nice. And people think I'm being humble. That's not really what it is. It's hard for me to accept more so the positive things than it is the negative things. Mainly because I've just been so negative about myself all my life. It isn't really what other people have said to me. It's what I've always believed, because I wasn't normal. So, it's hard to take that back, especially when somebody you love and you think, this person gets me, they love me, they accept all my complete oddness,
Mm-hmm.
And then they say something. It's crushing. And then it's hard for them to build it back up to where you feel okay about that again. You'll always go, he said I had a big nose. And then 2 years later, you're like, does my nose look big when I turn my face?
Mm-hmm.
And it stays, even though you don't probably consciously think that right away.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I definitely think that anger is something that will, go into more eventually. But this is how it works, and why it needs to, why you might think about learning how to handle it and control it. And then, eventually we'll move into, some of the ways that, like, anger management classes, like how they teach people to manage it. But I would definitely suggest, though, that people that are watching to try the angry letter and the response, because I think you might be really surprised by how much it does. So I don't know what we're going to do next week. Although if Nellie is with us, Maybe we could finally talk about OCD, because that's one I don't know as much about.
Oh, I hope you have a lot of time. It's a long, drawn-out process of crazy.
Yeah, well, as I say in most of our stuff, like, you know, when we do an episode of it, it's definitely not the last time we're ever going to talk about it.
Right.
Because we like to get a lot of the basics out of the way, and then later we can talk about some real specific stuff, and sometimes if we want to, if we're comfortable with it, we talk about some really personal times we had. And I know Ellie has a couple of the OCD stuff.
Hello, my sister.
Yes.
Welcome to the dark side. Yes. I feel that way when I see somebody that says they have it. I'm like, oh, it's like they're Ken or something. I know it's weird, but
You're also like, yes, I know.
I understand you on a level I really shouldn't. You know, like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of crazy. I would love that. You let me know when, and I'll be there.
Yeah, definitely. So, see you guys next week.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Bye. Thanks for coming.